Hello, and welcome to the first developer log for To and Fro. To and Fro is a VR action-adventure 3D platformer set in a stylized, low-poly world inspired by the Nintendo 64 era. In this game, you guide your character through a wide range of environments using a varied and extensive moveset. It draws heavy inspiration from two legendary games of the era, Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. The gameplay emphasizes joyful, expressive movement that is responsive and grounded, paired with exploration and discovery. I chose to develop this game for VR because it uniquely enhances perspective and immersion, something that can't really be captured on video or explained. It has to be experienced. To this day, very few VR platformers exist, and none have matched the experience I've always envisioned a VR platformer could offer. So I set out to make this game as a way to explore what is possible in this space, a frontier that still feels largely untouched. One main problem I've encountered in all other VR platformer games is that they take control of the camera position in the world, either moving the camera along fixed rails or teleporting the camera as you move through the levels. I've always wanted full control of my own perspective, not to have the game decide where I'm allowed to look from or where I'm allowed to stand. So in this game, the player always has complete control over their position and viewpoint. Every moment of the experience is framed by the player, not by the game. This is achieved through 6 degrees of freedom drone-style movement that uses the VR controller's positional tracking as input. The player simply holds the trigger on the right controller and moves that controller through real physical space in whichever direction they want to travel. One thing to clarify is that the camera is not parented to the controller. It does not simply follow the controller's position in space. Instead, the system measures the controller's motion vector, its direction and speed of movement, and applies that vector to the camera. Basically, the controller functions like a 3-dimensional joystick. A traditional joystick has a fixed mechanical center and returns to a neutral position when not deflected by the thumb. Our 3D joystick has no inherent zero-point origin, because it uses the VR controller's position, which moves freely in space and never naturally returns to a default zero state. To measure relative motion, a zero point must be defined. This is done by capturing the controller's current position at the moment of a trigger press and treating it as the origin. The controller's movement is then measured as 3D displacement relative to that point, with each trigger press establishing a new zero-point origin as needed. The character on screen is moved using a traditional joystick on the left controller. The same 3-dimensional joystick system used for the camera could also be applied to character movement, and it would work particularly well for underwater swimming. For now, however, a standard joystick is used. It functions perfectly well, and currently there are no underwater segments planned for the game. Regardless, the player is managing two things at once: their own positioning to get the perspective they want, and the movement of the character as they guide him through the world. All the footage you're seeing here shows the system in action. I am controlling the camera entirely, when it moves and when it remains still, using the VR controller. For difficult platforming, I keep the camera fixed to focus on the character's movement. In lighter sections, I move both the camera and the character together. The perspective is fully in your hands. The depth of exploration here is intentional. Camera control is not an isolated concern, but the most immediate expression of a broader design approach. Uninterrupted player agency and clarity of control are fundamental to the experience as a whole, and even more so in a VR game. They shape how the player relates to the game at every moment, and for that reason are worth addressing thoroughly. A video game is necessarily a black box of unseen mechanics, and the player has no insight into how it truly operates. That imbalance places a responsibility on the design. When a player acts within the gameplay constraints, the outcome must remain fair and predictable, without hidden modifiers undermining intent. The player should feel that their actions are the cause of events, not that unseen systems are arbitrating outcomes. When a VR game moves the player's perspective without consent or recourse, it violates the player's domain of control. In VR, the viewpoint is inseparable from the player's sense of presence. Ownership of that viewpoint is foundational. When a game asserts itself, acting independently of player input, actions no longer feel chosen, but imposed. The player is no longer directing the experience, but being managed by it. The same loss of player authority appears throughout gameplay design, even outside of VR. It is most visible in certain genres, but not confined to them. Many RPGs rely on hidden dice roll mechanics in combat. A weapon can visibly connect with an enemy and still miss. The player performs an action with a clear intended outcome, yet unseen background systems override the result. The link between intention and outcome is severed. Other examples of player management include route-marked waypoints and fast travel, where a game is reduced to a list of tasks to complete rather than a world to be discovered. The question then becomes, if gameplay is reduced to executing instructions rather than making decisions, what role does the player actually serve? And if players do not want to move through the world, why does the world exist at all? This issue is not genre-specific. It reflects a broader design philosophy in which player agency is not respected and the player is not trusted to engage with the world without the game intervening. These examples are not all direct parallels to the game being made here, but they serve as context for the design principles it is built upon. Difficulty and uncertainty are intrinsic to gameplay, but the player's authority over their actions must remain intact. When a game steps in to guide, correct, or override decisions already given to the player to make, it is demoralizing and teaches that control is conditional. Prioritizing player authority eliminates unnecessary complexity and layers of abstraction between the player and the game. Each added layer places more distance between intention and outcome, weakening control and responsiveness. Simple design maintains a direct path from input to result, allowing the game to respond clearly and immediately to player intent. This commitment to uninterrupted player agency directly informs the design of gameplay and movement in to and fro. A lot of thought and care has been put into how the main character moves and what it feels like to control him, because a good platformer lives and dies by the quality of its movement. Mario 64 remains the primary inspiration and standard. Its movement has clear weight and momentum, and the character always feels grounded in the world, never feeling floaty or imprecise. In this game, you have a comprehensive moveset that includes jump and double jump, roll, crouch, crawl, punch, incline-based sliding, and swimming. You can climb ladders and certain walls, and hang from edges. In addition to your core moveset, there are special power-up abilities acquired by collecting items found in the world. These include a general speed boost, a ground pound, surfing, which allows traversing water and climbing steep slopes, a spinning horizontal burst of speed, a power punch, Platform generation, which creates a temporary cloud platform beneath you. A helicopter-style ascent and glide, and a jump boost that enables a triple jump. The gameplay loop centers on observation, exploration, and navigating obstacles and enemies. Progress is gated by finding and using power-up abilities scattered throughout the levels. This is a platforming game built with a full commitment to movement and spatial awareness. There are no puzzles, no cutscenes, and no imposed linear narrative. The environments suggest a history and imply a story, but gameplay is never interrupted by scripted storytelling. My approach to level design does not follow conventional level construction workflows. The most common level design process begins with blockouts and mechanics, and the world is filled in afterward with props and set dressing. But to me, the spaces end up feeling manufactured and hollow, because the scenery serves as decoration, rather than something the gameplay has to contend with. When I begin building a level, I go straight to modeling the environment, and my priority is to establish the ambience and overall feel, with little regard for gameplay. After the world has been established, I then come in and look for creative routes through it. This approach is similar to how some other games, such as GoldenEye, were reportedly created. Environments are built first, then objectives and flow are incorporated into what already exists, rather than designing levels as abstract layouts from the beginning. Although it's fairly inefficient when levels are designed this way, they feel less contrived because the environmental layouts do not exist merely to justify gameplay mechanics. Routes, encounters, and flow are discovered rather than planned. Like a mountain in the real world, existing independently and indifferent to anyone who climbs it, these environments are not built around gameplay. Gameplay emerges in response to the world itself. Levels are not built from reusable blocks or sections. The major structure is modeled as a single unified piece of geometry within one Blender scene, so rhythm and spatial relationships can be shaped as a whole. This process of discovery does not preclude revision. Gameplay routes are discovered and refined through adjustment. Working in a low-poly style keeps the process flexible, allowing the world to be modified as movement is playtested and clarified. The entire level is UV unwrapped to a single 4K texture map, and it is hand-painted directly in Blender using the basic paint tools. This approach treats the whole environment as a single canvas, allowing me to paint anywhere across the entire level mesh at any time. Every pixel of the texture is painted by hand, with no reliance on tiling textures or procedural methods. The workflow is direct and uncomplicated, though demanding in execution. No layered textures or complex shaders are used, only a single basic material with one texture map, giving the level the feel of a painted diorama. Nintendo 64-era games used very small textures due to memory constraints, and were typically no larger than 64 by 64 pixels. Those textures had to be tiled across large areas in order to cover the whole environment. The 4K texture I am using contains about 4,000 times more pixels by comparison. However, I have the texture mapped across the entire level as a single sheet, with no tiling or repetition. The scale of the level is deliberately set relative to a 4K texture, keeping the effective on-surface resolution low, comparable to a Nintendo 64-era game, despite the much higher absolute texture size. While the visual design of this game does draw heavily from the Nintendo 64 era, I am not strictly adhering to the limits and constraints that dictated the original style. Rather, I loosely match it through a restrained design philosophy. I've always found this style appealing in its simplicity and readability, and in how much room it leaves for imagination. Ultimately, I understand the objective of game design to be the communication of ideas. A video game is an elaborate machine which conveys ideas to the player. Regardless of style, those ideas are always communicated through impressionistic abstraction. For example, if we wish for the player to get the idea that a character is swimming in water, is it necessary to model a fluid simulation accounting for buoyancy, displacement, pressure fields, flow dynamics, turbulence, wave behavior, and fluid object interactions? What if, instead, the water is represented by a flat plane with a simple transparent material? A collision plane is positioned just below the water surface for the character capsule to move along, and the animated character mesh plays a swimming animation to carry the illusion. A few sprite sheet particle effects are added for splashing, and the idea of swimming is more than adequately conveyed. A game's design is shaped by its creator's purpose. It is shaped by their intent to communicate an idea. If that intent is unclear or divided, there is no guiding principle to help shape design decisions, and the work fills with unnecessary detail that pollutes the expression. A game can only communicate with clarity and integrity when the work itself is treated as the primary object of care. If the reason for creating lies outside the game, such as profit targets, player retention metrics, or trend following, then it is being shaped to produce external outcomes. Competing demands are introduced, and its capacity for clear expression is diminished. A video game is a purposeful mechanism built to convey ideas. A machine is never built with complexity beyond its function. If a game's design exceeds what is required to express its purpose, then the work has been betrayed. Excess is not harmless decoration. It is interference, and the signal becomes distorted. This failure is common across games, television, and film. Works are pulled apart by competing demands until their structural integrity and their core signal is degraded to the point of incoherence. This project is a solo endeavor, with the exception of the music. Its scope is therefore limited by necessity. These limitations define the work. Design is an act of selection, and deciding what to remove is as important as deciding what remains. When options are limited and the work answers to a single origin, intention becomes essential. Integrity requires a single authority over the form. External influences are not permitted to enter, and nothing is added by compromise. As unnecessary elements are removed, what remains speaks more clearly and honestly, revealing the core idea the work was built to carry. The fortunate consequence of deliberately distilling an idea in this way is the emergence of a distinct personality. Anyway, that was a brief introduction to the game I am working on. Development began about 2 years ago. The character controller and core gameplay mechanics are complete, along with 2 of the 8 planned levels. If something here was of interest, the Steam store page is linked in the video description. Thank you for watching.